Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the weekly show of What is School For? My name is I am the host of this weekly live streaming show. On this show, I interview leading entrepreneurs, business leaders, parents, educators, students, people from all walks of life to come here. We discuss, we debate, and we disrupt education. The goal is to future proof the next generation. Today, I'm extremely honored and excited to have Dale Dupree on the show to discuss education. Most of you guys know Dale as the marketing, the sales guru, the LinkedIn thought leader, but very few of you probably know that he has a very interesting educational background. And that is what we're going to discuss today. And for those of you who don't know who is Dale, he's the founder and leader of the Sales Rebellion, and he's known as the copier warrior. And he's also the host of Selling Local podcast. He's a speaker, he's an author, he's an amazing person overall. For those of you who are not following Dale online, especially on LinkedIn, you are absolutely missing out. I don't know how long I have been following you, Dale. I just love your LinkedIn content. Not only am I learning a lot about sales and marketing, but also I feel like your content is making me a better human being. You know, how to be a better leader, how to be a better human. You're so real, you're so authentic. You're just like really amazing. And now I know your perspective on education. I just love you even more. So really excited and yeah, like super excited for today's conversation. And yeah, let us know. Hey, Alex, thank you for joining us live. So let me know in the comment section where you guys are joining us live, social media and geographically speaking. And we are live on all the social media channels, including Amazon Live. So I highly recommend you guys join us live on Amazon Live, where you can see a list of books that I have carefully reviewed and curated for you. Those books are related to homeschooling, parenting, disruptive education. So join us live on Amazon Live. And also a big shout out to StreamYard for being a sponsor of the show. Love, love, love StreamYard. So in the comment below, there's a link for you to check out StreamYard for free for 2 weeks. Without any further ado, welcome to the show, my friend.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for that awesome introduction, all the encouragement. I feel alive after listening to you. So I really do appreciate that very much.
Oh, absolutely. I think I even cried a few times just reading your LinkedIn post. Not lying. I was like, oh my God. I think I even showed to my husband, was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I was crying. So that is just like how amazing you are. So really excited. But like so for those of you who don't know you that much, and I just love you are a rebel, I'm a disruptor, and you have this rebellions like theme running throughout your brand and online content. So I'm curious, what is it exactly that you are trying to rebel against?
It's a great question. A lot of people ask it fairly enough. Really, a rebellion to us and to myself personally, it is the notion that what it is that we are doing is more than just trying to go against the grain, but that we are trying to build something that is very sustainable for people and
Mhm.
for communities instead of continuing to uh, essentially prop up the status quo and give power to those that are not sharing it from that perspective. So we like to say the rebellions are built on hope that
Mm,
anyone can be in sales. That it doesn't take a specific type of person that looks a specific type of way, that has a specific type of background, that went to a specific type of university and got a specific type of degree. We don't believe that, period. And so the rebellion is the concept of putting sales back into the hands of the people, humanizing the process, getting way more real in regards to what it is that we do on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis as salespeople, and to get people out of the box of what sales has kind of created and the stereotypes that have come from that. Lying, manipulating, cheating people out of money. We want to get rid of those things. My friend Andy Paul calls it being salesy, which I think is a pretty fun way to describe, the negativity that most people look at sales as. So in killing off those stereotypes, and I don't mean that literally, but just getting rid of them, I believe that we'll have better culture inside of the sales space. We'll be more open toward things like mental health. We'll build better relationships between our partnerships, which would be the people we sell to in our communities, and also internally in our organizations, where salespeople won't be, these essentially bearing departments inside of organizations that everybody doesn't look forward to having to deal with. And I know that's not every sales organization, and I know it's not every salesperson, but it's a vast majority, because if you ask people how they feel about a salesperson, 90% of folks that you'll, in a room will give you some type of negative answer toward that, even if it's kind of a mediocre answer. To me, that's negative. I want to be good. I never want to be indifferent or bad. That's the thought process.
I absolutely love it, right? So even though you are talking about marketing and sales, and I can pretty much apply the same script you just told us to education, right? Like, you don't have to have a specific background in order to succeed in life. But, speaking about education, and I was actually, to get prepared for our interview, I was like Googling you a lot. So every single interview you did was related to sales and marketing, which makes total sense. So share with us, what is your educational background growing up?
So I'm homeschooled. My mom decided when she wanted to build a family that she was going to homeschool all of her kids. There are four of us in total. And I am the second oldest. So she had a little bit of practice with my sister by the time she started homeschooling me, but we're all about 2 years apart. So she was just, rapid fire homeschooling us as we were growing up. And she did everything from elementary to middle school to high school. Now, we were part of an organization that it worked similarly to a private school, and that it had classes that we could elect to do in person or essentially virtually, as we would describe it today. But what they called it back then was in the home, to do those classes. My mom would essentially be given the curriculum, the opportunity to be able to test us and turn in the grades. And essentially there's accountability, at the organization that she would turn the grades into, that would check over everything and say, cool, this looks good. And again, like, it gave my mom much more control over our educations. No parent wants to just give their kids A's on top of it, right? So I like to point out that my mom put us through some pretty rigorous courses. I remember being a freshman in high school doing college level curriculum, from chemistry to math. And I became very proficient in the things that she was teaching us. But there was choice around what it was that we were being given as well, too. Our education was very classical. And so it was more of this free flowing art form of education, instead of just like, here's the book, read it, and these are the things that you have to now believe or take as truth. But instead, we got to formulate our own opinions on world history, or even American history for that matter. We were given the straight, hard, cold facts. So as kids, we were not coddled around specific subjects that could be taboo, or even in today's society in some areas of the United States, particularly, where they don't teach that particular type of history or the truth. They kind of whitewash it, or they make it look a little frou-frou, as we like to say, instead of giving us the facts of running indigenous people out of their homelands, of slavery. So I learned all these things at a very young age, and because of it, I learned a lot of respect for people through that process. I learned a lot of respect for culture through that process. And by the time I had graduated high school, I felt like I'd been through college in the first place. And I looked back at my education and felt more inclined to get into society and start living in society and contributing to society, because I had learned so much about it up until that point. My focus wasn't necessarily to go and get a college degree because of that as well, too, which I'm grateful to my mom for the flexibility in that, and my father as well too, because he was also part of those decisions. And all of my siblings, by the way, all went to college and got degrees. It was just me that didn't do
The
it, and I
true,
wasn't shamed or
right?
shunned. Yeah, I'm the rebel. Yeah.
You are the true rebel. You are the true rebel. Yes, I love it. Incredible. I have so many questions to follow up. And so by the way, everyone, thank you. We have quite a few people join us live on all the channels. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. And let us know if you have any questions for Dale regarding education or maybe a little bit about marketing, entrepreneurship. And so interesting. I homeschool my children, but I feel like homeschooling has just become really, really popular recently. And like, what inspired your parents? They are the true pioneers, right? So, what inspired them, especially your mom, to decide to homeschool you guys? You know, quite a few years ago, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents were free thinkers. They believed in choice, and they had grown up in a system, in a particularly the colleges they went to, the high schools, they had grown up in a system where, as they learned outside truths, and they saw realities as they started to travel and do their thing, that I think in those moments gave them a little bit more insight around the control that education
Mm,
has in
mm,
certain sectors and in certain types of schools, especially over the students, and also that there's a lackadaisical mindset in some instances as well too, based on what district you live in, what the what teachers you have, and I love teachers, don't get me wrong. I mean, those poor souls, I mean, they have to put up with all of us as kids for so long. It is definitely a sacrifice. But I also think about how, like, my mom was the ultimate teacher as well too, and she
mm,
should be recognized just the same as those folks that sit in a classroom, because she spent 18, 25 years, whatever the number is, because of the gap difference, the age difference between me and my siblings. So like 20 plus years, literally doing nothing but teaching us.
mm,
And she didn't have a social life. She wasn't, she jokes about how she didn't drink. Basically, she was a wine gal, as she likes to say, and she didn't have one sip of alcohol for 20 plus years as she put us through school. And as soon as my
mm.
little sister, the youngest, graduated, she went out and celebrated with a bottle of wine. That literally is what she did, right? And so there was a lot of sacrifice involved in that. But again, it's what they wanted for us. I would say, that when people think of homeschooling, they think that you're kind of shut off to the world.
Mm.
You're in a closed-minded situation because you have the opinions of just your teacher, and so whatever my mom believes, we believe. I would tell you straight up, that's not the truth, period. For everybody, at least. Or my mom gave us she allowed us to think outside of the box. She allowed us to disagree with things when it came to subjects like history or culture. She allowed us to formulate our own opinions, and she helped us to understand, things like math, not like, hey, you're going to need this one day, or you have to know this. She helped us to understand the purpose behind those types of subjects, and that it wasn't some type of punishment as much as it was flexing our brains and helping us to
Mm.
critically think. And she did that in a way that was very nurturing as well too. So, even as kids, we understood it, even if it wasn't always the most fun. But she did a great job at gamifying things, and creating extrinsic value for us, because we were rewarded for accomplishing certain tasks and getting homework done at specific dates and times. And so there was enough structure around it for us that, I mean, we felt like we were at school. Matter of fact, we spent more time in school doing school than any of my friends in the public sector.
Wow, that's like really amazing, and you made so many good points. And I love how you said that your parents actually encourage you guys to formulate your own opinions, and this is something that I observed is quite missing in the current students population. And I was before I quit my job, and I was a college professor for almost 15 years. And one thing I definitely noticed that was missing was that my students, most students, they don't have their own opinions on anything. When you ask them, like, what do you think? Their common response is, I don't know. Tell me, what do you want me to think? Hopefully, they can get to that A or like a high mark that whatever that once they figure out their teacher's interest, they will play the game in a way to get that grade. So it's really fascinating that you guys are, at such a young age, were being encouraged to formulate your own ideas. So, you probably like homeschooling was quite a few years ago, but if you can look back, Dale, so what do you think are some unique like skills and character traits or maybe even personality that you have developed as a result of homeschooling that is maybe otherwise very hard to cultivate?
That's a great question. I'm writing that down as I think, just to help me answer it. I think intuition is actually what comes to mind almost immediately. That my parents developed an intuition in me at a very young age to be able to look around life in general, to be able, so that when I was in situations that would be compromising,
Mm,
very high pressure, or so, peer pressure situations, even just normal things that we go through, I made decisions differently. I made decisions based on how they would affect others, and how that would consequently affect me, as opposed to saying, "Well, it's probably going to make me feel good, so why don't
mm,
I just do it? And then when I get in trouble, then I get in trouble, or maybe I won't get caught." I There was like intuition in moments, that I believe that I had, that other people that I surrounded myself didn't have, as much of, from that perspective,
mm,
right? So, like, if you think about, kids getting in fights, even, for example, and I struggled with anger at an early age, and it stemmed from my depression and some traumatic, moments in my life. But I would always, in those moments of taking anger out on somebody, get this gut check and have this like spirit of intuition basically check in with me and say, you could do a lot of damage to more than just the moment right now. You could do,
mm,
damage to your life, beyond what's going to happen over the next 30 seconds. And so I think that that was one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle for me, and in particular, that I learned. But because of it too, like, we also learn like critical thinking very
mm,
intensely. We learn critical thinking. So you could be sitting in a moment, and sure, you can't always process everything exactly how it needs to be processed in 5 to 10 seconds, but because of that intuition and because of that critical thinking, you could prolong moments, and you could say the right thing to make something kind of extend enough to where you could break it down in your head and figure out what needed to be done next. And then it also helped me from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I was in a band at 17 years old, touring, graduating from high school,
mm,
because I had flexibility of homeschool to be able to essentially like get my final credits, get a thumbs up from the state, and graduate with the 18 other people in my graduating class. You made the comment of that. I didn't really, you said, I don't really think that homeschooling got popular until recently, and you're right. I mean, I graduated with like 18 kids,
mm,
and that's in Orlando, right? So it's a very big metropolitan area. There's millions of people there, and when you look at the entire landscape, so I feel that we were very privileged from that
mm,
perspective, to be able to have parents that they just looked down the road instead of the moment, and they sacrificed a lot in the moment when it came to physical activities. So like, my mom loved to play, or loved to jog, for example, and so she stopped doing those types of things because she had to spend more time with us. And like, if she did go for a run or a jog, she didn't do it with her girlfriends, it was with us on our bikes, and it was like PE, right? So like, she really sacrificed a lot to be around us and to raise us and to have happiness at in those stages of her life as well too. And it's easy to look back on things and say, wow, that was awesome, but like, in the moment, we felt the same way as well too. We felt that not that we were different, but that we were being given an opportunity. And again, even at that young age, we didn't take it for granted by any means.
yeah, I mean, like I can so relate. That's pretty much my life nowadays. When I do take a walk, I used to listen to podcasts, but now it's like physical education with my kids, biking, all those things, and they'll have a conversation about life. So, which is absolutely the case. And so here, Actually, I have a follow-up question based on what you said. Dan is commenting the comment about critical thinking and slowing down. A lot of formal education is packing so much, and I'm not sure how kids learn deep thinking skills. That is actually, I actually read a study talking about, they were comparing like a few like groups of students. The group of students who received lots of structured learning, like, there's like just every single minute is packed, but longitudinally, like down the road, they are actually not performing as well as kids who actually do have some time to think and play. So very, very interesting. So, I know that you are a very successful entrepreneur, and I wonder how has your ability to practice, tap into your own intuition and practice critical thinking. So how has this ability benefited what you do as a business leader, as an entrepreneur?
I would say that one of the things that I think is really important, actually, that I say is that just like in sales, I believe that first off, I believe everybody is in sales. I
Mhm.
believe that teachers sell structure. I believe that a janitor sells, a clean room, right? Or cleanliness. I believe that, like a broker sells a network, right? And I believe that a buyer sells themselves. And when I look at it from that perspective and that angle of like what the rebellion stands for, and I think about me as an entrepreneur, and I think about the identity of that, like sales really is all it is influence. Every day it's influence. It's how am I as a brand and as a marketer and as a salesperson, how am I influencing people to be attracted to what it is that we're building, to come and also build with us.
Mhm.
And so I think that a lot of entrepreneurs get siloed into this identity of that, like, I built this thing and I need people to buy it. And I was raised in a community mindset where
Mhm.
when I played basketball and I was, one of, let's say, like 12 white kids on the team, and we had two black kids on the team, that those black kids, they rarely got time on the court. My dad and mom taught me so much better than most
Mhm.
other parents, that they didn't ignore those types of things. They'd ask questions like, hey, do you think it's okay that you guys all get more time on the court as kids, right,
Mhm.
than your counterparts? And what I mean by that is, so and so and so and so. And they'd point those people out without trying to make me hone in necessarily on anything other than that they were being discriminated against, without telling me that as a child, but also to be mindful of how they felt as humans in
Mhm.
those moments. And so when they would get time on the floor, for example, I'd be the only kid that would pass them the ball, and
Mhm.
those are the reasons why they were on the team, or they didn't quite make the cut of starting, because they couldn't qualify for the AA leagues, and
Mhm.
they weren't as good as other kids. And so because of it, their parents had to kind of settle for sticking them in these other groups, or maybe they weren't even athletic, and
Mhm.
their parents were like, you need an extracurricular activity. But even in those moments, we had such bigger learning examples than what most people did. My
Mhm.
parents looked at like every moment as being an opportunity to learn and to
Mhm.
build a community around us through that process. So because I look at things like culture differently than most people, because I understand the playing field of emotions inside
Mhm.
of daily activity and like everyday lifestyle, because I think bigger from the perspective of like how the brain actually works and reacts to certain things, and not just like the preference of a person, but naturally, what could be influenced into those people, because they're just people at
Mhm.
the end of the day. I look at the entire subject of like becoming an entrepreneur and being successful, and I recognize that it's more than me. It has to be.
Mhm.
I recognize that it's about the strengths and weaknesses of my team. I recognize that it's about the strengths and weaknesses of my community, of the thousands of people out there that identify as rebels, that are out changing the game and ushering in this new wave of mindset behind what sales truly is. And I believe that those 19 kids that I graduated with, I still remember all their names. I
Mhm.
knew them all very well. To me, they were the world, right? And just like my family was the world, the people in my life were the world. And so when I looked at my entrepreneurial career, dead in the face, I recognize that it, like, sure, Dale, you can have a good idea. That's cool. But what's going to make this successful is allowing other people to flourish inside of
Mm,
this as well too, and not to box it in, not to call it sales training, but to call it a lifestyle, right?
mm,
Which is why we call it a rebellion instead of, a different way to sell.
mhm,
We take on words, we take on structure, we take on process that's much different, and people can identify from the perspective of that it's inclusive and not
mhm.
exclusive to a certain type, to a certain style, to a certain vertical, however you want to look at that. And I believe that that's what's really created my success. It's allowed me to continually look inward. It's allowed me to continually ask the tough questions. It's why I'm in this room that I'm in right now on the bottom floor of a cabin that I'm renting out for the next 2 years while I build a cabin in the middle of the woods so I can spend more time with my wife and my son, and uproot
Oh,
my entire 36-year life in Orlando to do it and take those types of risks and become something that I want to become, not something that I'm trying to force myself to become.
I love it. Like so many mic drop moments. And I can tell, like, that's why I said earlier, like lots of your LinkedIn posts literally make me cry because I can tell that you were speaking from your heart when you were writing those posts, right? It's just like, and actually, what you just shared reminded me of like a study I read, like business leaders who are more in touch with their authenticity, with intuition, with their emotions, they actually have better ROI, more profit margin for their company. And I think you are the best testament to that. And I really like that, which is
Mm.
really powerful. And also, I love how you mentioned, we're all in sales, right? We're constantly selling, right? I like teachers. And I think this is one of the skills that more like young people, they need to learn, how to market themselves, how to be like selling their ideas, how to be an advocate for who they are. And so I want to go back. So we kind of talk about high school. You mentioned it briefly earlier that you actually didn't go to college. And I know this is so against the conventional wisdom, right? And conventional wisdom tells us that you have to go to high school, college to succeed in life. So I want to ask you, so as a business leader, how has not going to college, if at all, affected your authority?
It's a great question. And I think it starts like the answer starts with when I first got into business. And especially because I was in the music industry, like I had said. So I'm a high school graduate, and I never did anything else, right? And so when people would ask things like, "Oh, where'd you go to college?" or "Wait, you're 19 and you're on tour? What are you doing classes when you're home?" I mean, there was lots of, and y'all got to remember, I'm 36, so there wasn't online school like there is today. So I didn't really have a lot of options like that in the first place. But honestly, I didn't really feel drawn or the need to go and extend my education through the traditional system. My mom and dad taught me that life is about experiences, and that the
Mm,
most knowledge that you'll gain about specific things is by going out and doing, going out and failing, falling on your face. Sometimes it hurts even in the process. Other times, you're calloused enough that you don't even feel the failure. And both of those things are, extraordinarily important, because there should always be a middle ground that we walk on. That
mm,
we cannot become so set in our ways and so preferential to life, um, because we will miss out on so many amazing
mm,
opportunities. Like I heard a friend one time say, "I'll never go skydiving." And I used to feel that way. I used to think, yeah, that's like the only thing I don't think I ever want to do. But then I continued to challenge myself throughout my life. And now at 36, if you were like, "Hey, do you want to go skydiving?" I would not tell you no, right? I would
mm.
say, yeah, I'm open to the thought of that. Let's check it out and let's see what it leads to. And of course, if I die, then y'all can just play this episode and be like, "Dale, you should have stuck to your guns, my guy." But that's what life is all about, right? Is that it should be lived. We don't have a lot of time while we're on this earth. My mom and dad knew that. And so they spent, for each one of us, from 5 years old just about until we were 18, educating us. That's a
Mm,
lot of time. There's a big window in there, but they knew that really it's not much, that it would go by fast. and that soon we would all be immersed into the world, right?
Mhm.
And so when I look at my lack of college degree, I think it's funny to me when people judge me because of it. Matter of fact, when I had made my first actual job transition from the first company, so the first company I was with got acquired, so I didn't have to like re-interview, and I ended up being with that company, both companies, for a total of about 11 years. And so I didn't really have to do a whole lot of job searching, or I didn't have a lot of people saying things like, oh, you didn't get a degree. It was more or less like my clients saying things like that, but I
Mhm.
recognized real quickly that none of them cared. The more they got to know me, they would say things like, 6 months into our relationship, oh, by the way, where'd you go to college? What's your football team? Or they would ask me questions like that, and I would say, well, I root for this one, but that's just because my sister went there. Right? Well, where'd you go? I didn't go. And once people were so like intertwined into the ecosystem of Dale, and had built a relationship with me to the point that there was mutual respect, there was love. When I would say things like that, you got a much different answer than maybe if they would have asked me up front when they met me, for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
Where they would go, you didn't go to college. How are you who you are today? Was what
Mhm.
some people would say out loud, even like, wow, you've done a lot for not going to college. Which, again, I think I honestly, like, it's not that big of a deal, y'all. Like, more of y'all should not go to college and do what I did, because whether you choose to do something like that or not is nobody's business. And so for me, it was, I'm going to go get my experience in the real world. And I did. The things that I had to go through, um, from my best friend having to go through rehab because of heroin, through the
Mhm.
music world, from uh, uh, struggling with depression and attempting suicide while I
Mhm.
was at the top of my game
Mhm.
in the sales world. I have lived life and experienced it in degrees that I wish on no one else, but that I accept for myself because of my own choices. And that's what matters more than anything else. What is your choice? You don't need to be influenced by other people to go to college. You don't need to be influenced by anything but what it is that you believe is going to bring happiness to you and
Mhm.
ultimately give you the type of success that you want. You can get a $60,000 a year job that you work 4 days a week from 8 to 5, even if it's remote or on site, right? And be extraordinarily happy. You don't have to have all this wealth, all these riches. You don't, the things that the world tells you that are, they think are success, are defined as success, is typically a lie, because they're empty at the end of the day. And so really, like, again, like in transitions, or at any point when people would ask me about my degree, it never really affected anything, except for, the couple of stuck up folks that I forgive and love,
Mhm.
that made some arrogant comments to me, or tried to belittle me or make me feel dumb. And that's okay, right? Because again, like, I love those people just as much as anybody else. They just don't understand life the way that I understand it, and that's fine. It's not a big deal. And if more people thought this way and more people lived this way, we would have a much better world. But
I so agree.
reality is we don't. So that's okay.
I absolutely love your response. And I know, like I call myself education disruptor. So one thing that I really want to disrupt is this belief that the only way to succeed in life is actually going to college, is actually to have a college degree. And I speak from firsthand experience. I personally know lots of students who have college, not just one degree, but one after another. They're still struggling to, number one, figure out what they want to do in life. And number two, like actually generate some money and pay off their student loan. And I think, just like last year, I read a study published on Forbes talking about only 11% of senior leaders believe that college degree helps the students become work ready. Only 11%. That is a very low percentage. And I think, I love what you said earlier. And even your parents believe that real life is the best classroom. Like I got a PhD in like social media, public relations, and communication. But when I started running my business, I had to hire a coach, teach me how to do PR, teach me how to do social media. What I learned, I did learn lots of theories, but the theory didn't really help me understand how do I apply that to actually make money from my business. It was the disconnect is huge. I can write research papers, but I think maybe for some other disciplines it's different, but definitely for marketing, business, entrepreneurship, I think it's very, very different. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Here's a question from Mike. Thank you for joining us live. And so he's asking, what is the most important skill that your support network provides to help you be successful as a rebel?
I would say this might be kind of a non-traditional answer to a question like this, but my support network helps me to remember at my core the most important things that I have to be focused on when living my life, and one of
Mhm.
those things being empathy. I learned a
Mhm.
lot of empathy through my classical education, which is not. I want to say this because I know a lot of people understand the differences, but I want to say this just to like clarify that sympathy and empathy are not the same thing.
Mhm.
That saying to somebody in a moment, "Gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally get that." That makes it about you. Empathy is literally about looking at somebody else and saying, "You can't get that, period, because you're not that person." And you need to understand that in that moment. You need to be able to say, "Gosh, I don't know what this is really like because I'm not you." Have I been through certain similar situations? Yes. And so I can feel some familiarity in these moments, but empathy transcends I,
Mhm.
right? And it literally lives in the moment for the other person. And so the accountability that my community, my wife, my son, my mother, who's still alive and on this earth, my siblings, all three of them, their spouses, what those people provide for me is the constant reevaluation of the way that that I walk into every day, and my
Mhm.
attitude, whether I'm leading with empathy, whether I really care about other people and their experiences, what they're going through, how I can support them without making it about me. My dad was the best example of this. I remember one time the local chamber of commerce came by the office, and I just happened to be kind of like snooping around the front desk kind of thing, talking to the receptionist, trying to waste time because I sucked at sales back then. And I was worried about getting fired, worried about my dad firing me because I sucked at sales. So I was trying to find other things that I could possibly do at the company. And somebody came in and they said, "Hey, we want to drop this off for Curtis." And you know, sure, who are you? And we're with the local chamber, and we actually invited him to come out to this event, but he turned it down. We wanted to honor him, and but instead, we did it with him not there, and we made him this plaque, and we wanted to leave it with him. And that was my dad, like in a nutshell. Like in that plaque, like it's set like far off in the corner of the office, so that you had to walk up to it and read, the honoree and why they were honoring him, because he didn't want to show it off. And he didn't show up to that event not because he didn't want to be around people. My dad was a massive extrovert, like one of the most extroverted people I've ever met. And I'm pretty extroverted, and he was beyond me even, right? He didn't go because the guy led with this with a servant's heart. And so I look at that as my part of my legacy, and part of one of the most
Mhm.
important things that I can do to honor my father's legacy, which is to just continually allow like my support network to be this thing that puts me in check more so than anything else, and hold me accountable to my belief system as a rebel, to the things I want to accomplish as a father, as a husband, as a human on this earth, and what it is specifically that I believe others outcomes can be too, because of that same outlook, that it can be better. I saw a young man last night, and he made the comment. He said, "Yeah, I might do something on my own." And I was like, "Do it." And
Mhm.
he kind of looked at me like, "Well, I gotta get some ducks in a row." And I gave him a quick story, not to derail this question, but I gave him a quick story, and I basically told him my story over the last year, and how
Mhm.
I basically lost everything. I had everything, and I bet it all, and I lost it all in the process. And I said, you could set yourself up for that kind of success all you want. What are you going to do when you lose that safety net is my
Mhm.
question,
Mhm.
right? Are you going to be prepared for that, right? Because for me, in my head, I was always ready for it. There was never an option, to fail, right? But there was always the possibility. at all times, right? And so for me, again, it's like opening people's eyes to those things. They're like, listen, like you can lose all your money and all your stuff, and trust me, if you've built community, if you're out there doing it for more than just yourself, people will have your back. I have witnessed it in my own life and experienced it, right? And I have literally like lived the dude from It's a Wonderful Life's life, like not to be cliche, but I have seen my community come to my aid in the midst of thinking I'm at the end, I have nothing left. And so for me, again, like it's about that bigger picture more than anything else, and it's about where we're headed as a whole, as a society, not just Dale. I love
Mm.
Dale. Dale's a cool dude. I really do. I love Dale. I love myself, but at the same time, I believe I have a gift, and that other people deserve that piece of me more so than they do the Dale that just wants everything for himself.
Mm. Well, this is so powerful, and I definitely agree with Jeremiah. We should just call you Dr. Dupre, which is true. I think you just got a new name, which I agree. And I love what you said, like it's amazing this young man can have a conversation with you, right? This is what I share with my student. Don't try, just like do it. And I also love how, again, we talked about this, how much you do this with the servant heart, right? Like I'm here to serve, which reminds me, just recently I had a conversation with my 10 years old, and he like we homeschool him, but he takes some online classes, and he told me like a story that he heard from other school kids. It just shows me like, wow, like where is humanity? I don't know if you know this. Apparently this has been trending, like young people, they all know it. So it's like two brothers. The older brother asked the younger brother, like, what is 10 plus 9? And so the younger brother said 21. And so the older brother said, that is stupid. So that video, I would think it was only 9 seconds, has gone viral. And then people
Oh,
create like GIFs, they create memes about this, like stupid. Like if you Google this, you will find it. I was like, wow. And people are laughing. They think this is like a joke. And I was like, wow. Like, my son and I, we had a very powerful discussion. Can you imagine yourself in that young brother's shoes? Like, imagine 10 years later, you had this video about yourself going viral on the internet, being called stupid by your own brother. Just like, where is humanity? Right? It's brutal.
yes, I agree with you. It sucks.
It's absolutely brutal. And then the fact that most kids, they laugh at it, and then like nobody has the courage to rebel against that, right? Nobody had the courage to like, that is wrong. Why is that? That is wrong. We shouldn't do that. And just like, yeah, so I think that is, going back to what you were talking about earlier, like critical thinking, asking those important questions that nobody had the courage to ask. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so here, comment from Michael. Like, I really appreciate your humility attitude, your response, and servant leadership. Yeah, it's like, which reminds me. So I'm just in this coaching program, and I think it's very easy. Like when people have achieved some level of success, it has become an ego thing, right? And you forgot why were you doing this in the first place? Because, oh, I closed another client, I made this, and that. And you forgot in the very beginning, why did you decide to do this? So I think that servant leadership, always remember the beginning, the humble beginning. So I think that's really, really powerful. Yeah.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah. And so I have some and talking about education. And so what do you think, like, even if you didn't go to a traditional college, and so if you could become like an education leader, school principal, whatever, if there was a magic wand, and what are some changes regarding the current education system that you would like to see and to make a difference, to rebel against?
Common Core. So I'm from Florida originally. I just moved to Tennessee a couple months ago, but that was a hot topic in
Mhm.
my state because our governor at the time, Mr. Jeb Bush, the one and only, he adopted that style of teaching, and I started watching kids, do the 9 plus 10 math problem in a way that like I just I can't still to this day comprehend that
Mm,
we have to create this workaround for people to basically make up their own answers to get to the answer. And to me, it does not teach people what the core principle and values are behind something like math. It doesn't
mm,
teach them that. Instead, it shows them this web that we're systematically trying to take people through, or I should say, force
mm,
people through, that they have to do in order to be successful, right? In that particular topic. And I look at things like that just from a different lens. Like, why are we complicating everything so much every day? We like call it what it is, right? That my friend Stephen Kazmarchak, that's his favorite thing to say. Just say what it is. Just say it
mm,
like just call it what it is. There's no need to bounce around on these type of topics and try to justify the ifs, ands, whats, and whens. You just gotta call it what it is. So if you're manipulating people's minds, just say that you're doing that, right? Like,
mhm,
let us all hear it, and so we can decide for ourselves whether or not it's something we want to participate in the first place. I would say that if I was to take like a role, I'd like to be a professor. Like, the thought of going and teaching kids that got a, like, let's just say a professional selling program certificate inside of
mm,
a business degree. The thought of that is really attractive to me because I'm a teacher at heart. That's just what I
mm,
do. I coach inside of my organization as well as run the sales department. And so for me, like, that's life. I love the idea too of somebody coming to me and saying, hey, I'm trying to set appointments and I can't, because I look at things so much bigger, and so instead
mm,
of saying, well, show me your process, I usually start with, okay, well, like, why do you want to set an appointment? All right, the non-traditional side of things. And I feel like professors have a really unique opportunity inside of certificate programs, especially, to be able to lead people non-traditionally into the
mm,
promised land of what is to come for the success that they desire to have for themselves, right? Because I even look at the professional selling programs around the United States and I think they're good. I love them. I think they're awesome. I think where they lack still, though, is that they butter you up to go into sales. Like, just tell people what's up. Tell people that tell people that this is not an easy path. Tell people that they have to
mm,
sacrifice just as much as they're going to gain. Like, just be honest. And so
mm,
for me, like, that would be my answer. That those would be the places. That's the thought process. Behind why I would choose that type of route, because we need people badly in this world to start not
mm,
standing up for what's right, but by any means, because what's right to me could be wrong to someone else, but standing up for people
mm,
more than anything, and standing up for these future generations and giving them the ability to choose, just like my parents gave me. And they didn't just give it to me through my education, they gave it to me in everything that I encountered in my life. Hey Dale, do you want to play in a band or go to college? They didn't say you have to go to college, and if you play in a band, we're going to disown you, right? I mean, they gave me every opportunity to be who I am today, and we should be giving that to everybody else at every opportunity that we possibly can. That's what
mm,
it's all. That's, to me, that's education. Teaching people that core value and principle of life, and that the choice is yours, and that those choices will affect more than just you, is what it's all about. If we could just get to those roots, back to those roots, I believe that things would change drastically.
Oh, I love this. It's like so many great points. It's so powerful. I definitely agree. I'm just reading this really powerful comment from Alice. Listening to you speak, it sounds like you had the benefit of having a true teacher, which clearly your mom, your parents. What should change with
Mm,
teacher preparation to help teachers be more of their authentic selves and provide students with more care and kindness? Because we know
mm,
learning is a social endeavor. Oh, great question, Alice, who
uh,
is an amazing teacher herself. Yeah.
Beautiful question. Thank you for asking. A lot of things come to mind right now. I think that we lead with preference inside of most things in our life. And that teaching, when it comes down to teaching, if, let's just say, we're reading out of the curriculum itself, it's real easy to kind of, like, in prep, to go through some of those using some of the words that would be in that particular teaching, or some of the statements, or some of the stories, and saying like, man, I don't really agree with this, and so I'm not going to tell the classroom these things. Or the opposite of that, like leaning into those things and like drilling them into people, like this is the way, right? And
Mhm.
so I feel like if we can, as people, as teachers in general, right? Because again, like if you're a parent, you're a teacher. If you're a mentor to somebody, you're a teacher. If you have
Mhm.
colleagues that are watching you and you're extraordinarily successful at your job, you're a teacher. There's a lot of teaching happening when you're standing at the gas pump and there's somebody sitting there crying in their car across from yours. Go over there and ask them if you can pray for them. You're teaching
Mhm.
in those moments too. You're showing people what compassion, humility, and kindness looks like. You're showing people what it looks like to be a human being on this earth, right? So when I think about what teachers could do in the classroom different, is that we got to stop. Society is telling us that preference is what it's all about, right? We've got to stop having preference, right? And that goes for every kind of preference. We have to let people decide for themselves. We have to
Mhm.
lead people in a way that gives them the choice to be able to decide for themselves. And we can sit here and argue till the cows come home about whether or not a 12-year-old should be able to make their own decisions. Give them the opportunity in those
Mhm.
moments where you still have somewhat of control, because they live with an adult. They're with a peer group in those moments. We're not talking about them being in the streets. We're not talking about them having to make a decision that could kill somebody, right? We're talking about very critical moments in the way that we teach people beyond preference to be able to make decisions for themselves and see the consequences in controlled environments because of that. And again, if it goes beyond preference, then it will be extraordinarily effective, because people will see that, wow, this person who is, let's just say, super conservative and goes to church, and they're over here having a really open conversation with this kid, this high school kid that's gay, for example. And they're not
Mhm.
shutting them down, and they're not making them do things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're not telling them they can't speak up on a particular topic, but instead they're including them, and they're allowing them to have their own truth in those moments. And those are powerful things for kids. And I witnessed that. I witnessed my very, very conservative parents literally show me what it looks like to be a human being, right? That
Oh.
I never really looked at my parents as like a specific type of political affiliation, or a specific type of church affiliation. I never looked at them like that. I looked at them as like the smartest, most amazing humans that I'd ever met. And I was very influenced by them because of that. And so for the parents out there listening that are thinking, well, I have to tell my kids that they've got to do these things. Like the more you try to control those situations, the worse it gets. And if we stop trying to control everything in a classroom, it'll get better. Promise. I promise you. It absolutely will.
Yeah, oh, it's so powerful. It reminds me, I read this article talking about like how human beings, if they want to learn something, they just want to learn. It is actually humanly impossible to stop being curious. I was like, wow, that is so powerful. And I love what you said about, just like kids make their own decisions, give them different choices. I grew up in China, in a country, at least
Mm.
back then when I was a kid, we didn't have any freedom speech. Like, that is something I really appreciate. I never learned an alternative. There was only one voice, there was only one path, so everything just like one decision maker. And that is something I really appreciate after I came to the United States, like different options, multiple realities. And it was really empowering, and I learned how to trade off, right, how to do decision making. Those are some really important skills. And you have to give them the autonomy, be independent decision makers. I really love. So you're such an amazing person to chat with, and now you have a very successful business and you have a team. So when you are hiring people, what are the qualities, what are the hard skills, and what are the soft skills that you look for in a potential candidate?
So we look for people that will challenge us.
Mm.
We look for people not that like will complement our own behaviors, but that will like challenge us, and that will come in and do something radical for themselves inside of our organization that they can be proud of, personally, which will absolutely, cause gratefulness and a heart of gratitude from us, in the process as well too, because we know that when people are taking pride, individually from that perspective, that and we give them that control, right, over a department, over a process, that regardless of whether or not it comes out the way that we particularly wanted it to, that if it serves others, if that's the mindset, it's the only part of the mindset that we have to share with people, is that
Mm,
mindset of true community and what that looks like.
mm,
So again, preferences have to go out the window. You have
mm.
to say, it doesn't matter what this person looks like, it doesn't matter what they sound like, it doesn't matter what sex they are. They could be male, female, they could be deciding that they want no gender. It To us, it's about, well, what particularly are you going to do to impact the community
Mhm.
more than anything? Like, that's the number one thing that we focus on, right? We like, throw the rest out. Like, you're a human, you're here. We are so grateful that you want to be a part of this movement and you want to create impact. Where would you like to do that and how?
Mm,
And when we buy into you, that's when it's a marriage, right? That's when,
mm.
for us, from that perspective, and we're fresh at this. My business partner Jeff and I mean, I just stepped down as CEO and
I
demoted
see.
myself because I suck at being a CEO, and asked Jeff to take that over, because it's important to the two of us and our vision that the right people be in the right places, and
Mm,
that it can't be based on preference. It can't be based on, well, I need to have this control or power. None of that. That can all go out the window. And if it goes out the window, you're going to have more freedom, more flexibility, and a better environment that you and culture that you create. And because of it, I believe we have some of the best people on earth on our team at this point. And it's been a slow roll of going from focusing very heavily on people that could essentially um, do our services. So I should say, maintain our services and actually coach people and sell to people, to looking at, like, well, what, like, that's cool, but what about all the internal processes? What about the people that are running our communities, from the perspective of, like, our Slack group, for example, or the customer experience when they come through? Or so, and what about the sales process itself? If we have a coach, that essentially is selling and then they're coaching, does that give people the right experience? Does it really help people to understand what we're all about? Does it really support the total outcomes that we desire? Or should we have a dedicated sales department, right? So
mm,
we sit back and really looked at those things, and again said, let's throw preference out the window and think about, how does it serve other people, and who is willing to come and do that with us, right? To put others before themselves. That selfless mentality, I believe, is
mm,
extraordinarily important, right? Because when we find people like that in our walk and in our lives, we can guarantee that they know themselves well enough to be able to enact humility, to be able to understand that they're always going to be learning, that they're not going to
mm,
ever be the greatest ever in their own mind. And those are great attributes, because
mm,
those are the people that I want to surround myself with, because they're
mm,
brilliant human beings in their own way, whether they believe it or they don't, because they are very aware. They're ultra aware of others, ultra aware of themselves, ultra aware of situations. And because everything is for the glory of the movement that we're creating that betters people's lives, there's a different focus.
Yeah, I love how you just listed this incredible list of like soft skills. I love it. And like, yeah, join people, yeah, inviting people to be part of this movement. It's like so beautiful. I agree. I think those are the skills that can really help you, start and keep the movement going. And I think the hard skills are always like, they can probably take some training here and there, watch some videos, but those qualities about who they are as a human being, those are really, really important traits that can help you advance your vision forward. Yeah. And to like finally to wrap this up, and do you think you're amazing dad? Do you think you will be homeschooling your kid?
Oh yeah, my wife has bought into that already. She's like, the relationship you and your siblings have with each other, with your spouses, like, just like her experience with me, like, she's bought it. I think it was actually her idea before it was mine. so
I love it.
so
I
yes,
love
my son
it.
Trip will definitely be homeschooled.
How old is he? 3 or 4?
He's turning 4 in 2 weeks.
Wow, happy birthday. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank
You
you.
have another little rebel and to continue this journey, continue the movement. I love it. So what an incredible conversation. And so please do share with us. I have been sharing your LinkedIn. I assume that's the best place for people to connect with you. And are there any other places people can connect with you and learn more about what you do and just like be in your like amazing leader under your amazing leadership?
I appreciate the kind words again, and also the opportunity to share that. You can find me on any social platform. Typically, it's at Sales Rebellion or Leader of the Rebellion or Dale Dupree, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. You can find me. LinkedIn's a great spot for community interaction. As far as my feed, there's a lot of people in the comments giving their own opinions on things. But that's what it's all about, right? It's about us. So don't come and try to find and follow Dale. Come and try to unlock what it is that your potential truly is. And by doing so as well, I believe you'll find a community to surround yourself with. And the best place to do that is salesrebellion.com. Top right hand corner, click on join the community. And there's a Slack channel that we have open for absolutely no charge. It's got about 1,500 rebels in it right now that I welcome you to come and dive deep into. Do some backlog searches, see all the great topics that we've talked about, the things that have already been discussed, and bring your own topics, bring your own learning, and come and enjoy.
Yeah, I'm part of the Slack community. I love there's like always so much going on, conversations, things like that. It's incredible. I also love how you run this incredible community. Yeah. And I agree, very powerful conversation. Thank you so much, my friend. And really fascinating conversation. Nice change from like the sales and marketing podcast interview we typically do. So thank you. I really appreciate you. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live. Have an amazing weekend. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.